This place is amazing.
What the hell is this place and why should you care about it? Well, the short answer is that this is the Metaverse, and it's not only the next big thing in social networking, but it's also a brilliant way of making money. But this answer isn't very satisfying, so let me tell you a bit more about the Metaverse, what you can actually do in the Metaverse, and sort of give you a whistle-stop tour of everything you need to know about it. Right, what actually is the Metaverse? Well, this term, the Metaverse, isn't actually a very new concept at all. It was first coined in the 1992 science fiction novel Snow Crash to describe this sort of virtual reality world where lifelike avatars could interact with each other in this 3D virtual environment. And today the term is actually pretty similar to what it was back then. To describe this digital reality where digital representations of people can interact with one another. But this isn't really a perfect definition either, because one, nobody really knows what the Metaverse is. It's kind of like trying to describe what the internet was back in the 1980s. You could see it's going to be something that's pretty cool, but nobody could predict what it's going to look like in 20 years' time. And number two, it's many things. Like, there isn't just one single metaverse. There are many different types of metaverses out there, all with slightly different functions. Like, there's metaverses for gaming, metaverses for education, metaverses for business, etc., etc. So, it's very difficult to pinpoint one specific definition for the metaverse when there are so many different things you can do within each of these different metaverses. Having said all of that, and despite all of these different functions within these different metaverses, I think the really cool thing about the metaverse in general really boils down to two key things. That's networking and investing. So firstly, networking. Now, at its most basic level, the metaverse is just the next logical step in social networking. But instead of using traditional social media sites where you would send, messages to your friends or share memes with them, you can sort of do all of this and interact with those people in this 3D virtual environment. So you can share messages or communicate as if you're speaking to them in person. You can play games with them, you can go on quests with them, you can even go and party with them. So there's a bunch of different things you can do as if you were there in person with them, except for you're not. You're in this sort of 3D reality, this virtual reality space. So I guess, to put it bluntly, it's kind of a little bit like Club Penguin, but on drugs. Secondly, investing. Now, just like you can buy land and clothing in the real world, you can also buy virtual land and virtual outfits for your avatars in the metaverse. In fact, you can buy pretty much anything you like, as long as you've got the cryptocurrency to pay for it. And just like the real world, this virtual land and this virtual property can be traded or sold to other users. So whatever you decide to buy within the metaverse can later be sold on for a profit. In other words, you can make money in the metaverse, which is pretty cool if you ask me. The actual cryptocurrency you use within each of the specific metaverses will depend on which metaverse you're in. So if you're in the Decentraland metaverse, which is one of the metaverses we're going to be talking about later, then you're probably going to be using a token called a mana token. So by owning stuff in the metaverse and trading it wisely, not only does the value of the digital assets that you buy raise in value, but so does the associated value of the tokens that you own within that metaverse. So if you're buying stuff in Decentraland, not only do those assets rise, but so does the value of the mana token. Therefore, over time, not only do you make money from trading virtual goods, but also the value of the money that you hold within that specific metaverse should increase in value too. Okay, well, this all sounds great, but how do we actually get involved with the metaverse? How do we actually begin diving in and exploring what the metaverse actually involves? Well, there's a bunch of different metaverses that we could get involved with, like Somnium Space, Engine, Upland, and so on and so forth. But the two metaverses that literally everyone talks about are Decentraland and the Sandbox. So these are the two that we're going to focus on today. So what's actually the difference between Decentraland and the Sandbox? Well, at its most fundamental level, there really isn't that much difference between them. You can explore this big virtual world and interact with all the players and objects within it. Both metaverses are also developed on the Ethereum blockchain, so any land or property you buy within those metaverses will be stored as an NFT on the Ethereum blockchain too. But there are also some crucial differences too, and we're going to go through them one by one. We've got the graphics, we've got land and tokens, we've got ownership, and we've got access. So first, the graphics. Now, out of the two, the Sandbox probably has better graphics, and it's embraced this sort of Minecraft style approach with the polygon shapes and everything like that, whereas the Decentraland is a little bit glitchy and is kind of a little bit reminiscent of the game Second Life. So Second, land and tokens. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I don't really think it's necessary. But the point is that even if the fundamentals of each of these metaverses are pretty similar, they do differ in slightly different ways too. So, kind of in the same way that if we were going to go to a different country, we'd find that there's a different currency. We can also see that there's different things that we can buy, and there's also a different amount of real estate that we can buy too. And so when we go to these different metaverses, we'll also notice that there's a different currency, in this case a different cryptocurrency, but there's also different amounts of real estate that we can buy within those specific metaverses. For example, the Sandbox has significantly more real estate to be bought compared to Decentraland. 3. Ownership. At the moment, Decentraland is a decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO for short. And all this really means is that all the rules governing the Decentraland metaverse are embedded within the computer code itself. So there's no need for any central authority to run the Decentraland metaverse. In contrast, the Sandbox metaverse is still run by a central company or organization, so there are people in control of the direction of the Sandbox. Now, this isn't to say it's necessarily a bad thing. Like, the Sandbox are run by a very experienced team of previous game developers, so they kind of know what they're doing, and they've also got a really good plan for the future. So just because we got one that's a DAO and one that isn't, doesn't necessarily mean that one is better than the other, but it's important to know the difference. 4th and finally, access. So Decentraland was the very first metaverse to create a working proof of concept, which means that it's currently completely available to the public. On the other hand, the Sandbox isn't currently available to the public and only just relaunched as alpha in November 2021. So if you want to get involved with the metaverse and start exploring it right now, then my recommendation would be to go to Decentraland and start exploring their metaverse as a guest. And you can do so, you can set up your avatar, you can start running around, you can start playing games, and it's all a lot of fun. But if you want me to explain how to do this, like step by step, then I'd be more than happy to do so in another video. But all of this is about where we are right now. So what's in store for Decentraland and the Sandbox in the future? Well, let's start with the Sandbox. Now, the Sandbox have a pretty clear goal in mind. They want to bring the Sandbox to every single mobile device by the end of 2022. They also want to get the Sandbox launched on PlayStation and Xbox and have over 5,000 games across the Sandbox by the end of 2023. They've also got a pretty funky goal of trying to create in-game jobs within the Sandbox, so you can basically hold down a job within the metaverse as well as holding down a real job in real life, if that sort of thing interests you. Decentraland, on the other hand, doesn't really have much of a roadmap at all. They kind of just want to make things up as they go along. If there's value in going down a certain path, then they're going to go down that path. If not, they won't bother. I think the only real thing that they got going for them at the moment is that they kind of want to introduce more celebrities and creators and brands onto their metaverse so that they can begin NFT drops, so they can start selling and offering NFTs to their audience. So I think that's the next big thing for the Decentraland platform, and they should be rolling that out very, very soon. So this leads me on to the very final question I have, and that is, which of these metaverses is best? Now, the truth is, this is quite a difficult question to answer because the Sandbox metaverse has only been alpha tested and there hasn't been quite as much battle testing as there has been with the Decentraland metaverse. But with Sandbox's better graphics, its wider range of investors and partners, and its more concrete plans for the future, I think my bet would be on the Sandbox metaverse. All in all, it's pretty hard to tell which metaverse is going to win outright. And to be honest, it could be a completely new metaverse that hasn't even been created yet. So I think the best thing for all of us to do is to stay tuned.